talk about that. Like a lot of the shit that I watch, whether it's like, Gary V, sometimes he's just driving or like riding in a car.
Yeah.
It's about the content. It's not about the production value.
No, and just like documenting. That's what I like most about it. It's just like walking around and being like, this is what I got going on today. And in the end, as long as you're not doing something stupid, most of the time that's pretty valuable content. And if you do something stupid and funny, that's kind of valuable content as well.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping to get from like the guys at the farms, just documenting what they're doing every day. I think that information is super interesting to people because people are interested in weed. It's a really popular industry right now.
Yeah.
And like the farm is super cool. It would be like awesome for, like the greater population to be able to see what's going on there and like really understand where the weed comes from, what people are doing every day to actually make it happen, right? Because it's a lot.
It is a lot. But the cool thing too is it's a lot done by people just like them. And that's like our crew are unique in that they do special things for us, but before they were growing cannabis, they were doing a lot of different things, right. Much like, the rest of the community does now. And so it's really cool to see different people take on different roles and then, them come together as a team and have this camaraderie between them. And like you said, there are times you could document out there on the farm that it would make for like hours of reality show. Right. Just in terms of like what's getting in a good way, like what's getting done and like the struggles and like, oh shit, that broke. Well, what do we do now? We've got 10 people here, shift them over here, work on this, call in Fish, call in Mason, like it's a whole production. It's an orchestra. It's fun.
For real. It is, seriously. Well, I really appreciate your willingness to do this today. This is the inaugural podcast for the business, so maybe you could kind of introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So, my name's Charlie Mckenzie. I'm a grower at heart. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and that can be either plants, mushrooms, or people. Those are the real, three things that I focus on growing. And I'm one of those people that's, constantly growing and trying to grow myself through things I learn and people I interact with. Lucky enough, today to be the director of cultivation and able to, work in a few different capacities when it comes to how plants are cultivated, in northern Michigan, whether that's outdoors, a greenhouse, or indoors. We've got a team of about 15 full-time folks that I'm leading day to day, and that's kind of the thing I enjoy most, is seeing those folks grow and alongside the plants. Sometimes it's not as parallel as you'd like it to be as the plants are growing as fast. I mean, the past 6 weeks, holy crap, the plants have exploded. But I've also seen a lot of growth out of different people on the team. So that's really cool. I'm super lucky to be here in northern Michigan. I never thought I would ever say that being born and raised in Georgia. So never thought I'd be in northern Michigan ever.
Seriously. Me too.
It's something else. It's a special place, special people, and a lot of special opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. I mean, I originally come from the south side of Chicago. My family moved to California when I was a kid. I never thought I would wind up back in the Midwest. Like, it never occurred to me until the licensing opportunities came up here. Yeah. And we started flying out. And then, during COVID, obviously couldn't fly anymore. So my wife and I came here and stayed on the farm for 6 weeks and decided that this was the place that we wanted to live and raise a family. So I feel the same way about northern Michigan. Absolutely love it. You were talking about like the people portion of what you do, and I think that's been the most impressive thing to me is that you have, like, when I go to the farm, not only are those guys like absolutely stoked, like just like in a great mood, but they're super productive. They all have like really impressive skill sets, And if I ask them what they're doing, I get like a very in-depth look at like what they're doing, not just a very simple like I'm putting on trellis or whatever they happen to be doing that day. I get like a really in-depth. So like, could you speak a little bit to like the people aspect of what you do?
The like I was saying, I mean, that's what gets me up and drives me every day. I mean, I love seeing the plant growth, but the people growth is just, it's so rewarding. And for me, it took me a long time to realize that, you know, people grow plants, and there are so many systems and so many different controllers and automation pieces of equipment that you can add to your cultivation that is going to help you. But really what, you know, grows a crop day to day is like consistent execution. And we're definitely not at the point where humans can be removed from cultivating plants. And so like we've got to focus on looking at the people on our team and seeing how we can grow them to the point where they can interact with these other pieces of equipment, these different scientific diagnostic tools, and help us improve the business. And I look at it like I work for them. When it really comes down to it, I'm trying to figure out ways that they can do their job better. And that's sometimes like removing roadblocks, you know, out of their way. Sometimes that's building them up and, you know, helping them realize what their superpowers are, or redirecting them if they're not in the right spot, because they may think that's what they want, but they haven't really evaluated. And sometimes they join the team and they don't know what they want. And one of my favorite stories so far is it recently played out where we had an individual, a really nice lady, come join our team from processing. And she came on like right at the beginning of cloning. And as you know, building up a mother stock, get to the point where you're going to clone and you're going to take 30,000 clones in, you know, 6 weeks, you're busting it. And so we talked to her and said, hey, there's an opportunity to get, you know, good consistent hours here on the cultivation team, and we would love your help. She was reluctant because it was different than what she had done before. It's a lot of hard work, and she already knew that up front.
Yeah.
She joined the team. She was a great sport in the sense of she took it on and she did her best, and she just continued to improve. Well, my colleague, Tyler, director of manufacturing, was like, hey, man, I would love to have her back. And I was like, well, we can talk to her. I don't know if she's going to want to come back. Like, that's the kind of team we have. Like, I don't know if she's going to want to come back. Sure enough, we had the conversation, and she's still trying to decide whether she wants to move back to the processing side, right? She really likes the idea of air conditioning consistently, especially right now during the summer. But she's like really having a hard time with the potential of leaving her cultivation team. And that's not... I'm there to kind of curate the environment and the culture, but that's a product of the team and them really building this, you know, high morale, high productivity, and like you were alluding to, they're just really prideful. And that's the thing that gets me excited, is seeing them be prideful or seeing them achieve something and realize the impact. Like, you know, fabricating or coming up with an idea to change a piece of equipment so it saves people's backs and you know, their physical labor, and makes it, you know, 3 times more efficient from a cost standpoint. When they come running up to you like ear to ear and say, hey, I got this idea, right? We're gonna go like this, and can I try it? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's go try it, because the impact that can make, holy crap. And when it happens and it follows through, and then you know, applaud that person in front of the whole group, then everyone else is like, all right, permission to get better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that starts to be internalized as well. I think, like, if you're on a team like that and you see everything constantly improving, you're like, all right, well, I got to keep up. Like, me, myself, I got to get better. How do I do that? Look for stuff to learn. And that's hopefully what I continue to get to do, is just introduce folks to new ideas, new techniques, and things that I'm learning.
Yeah. So you really are like the people who are working there, and it's completely obvious just based on how the plants are doing, but they're not just there like doing their job. They're there like actively thinking about what they're doing, and they're coming up with new solutions, and you're like giving them the freedom to think and to be creative. And I mean, to me, like, that's awesome, and it's absolutely obvious in how those guys are performing. Like, when I go to the farm, like, fuck, these guys are fucking rock stars.
They're crushers, and it's you have to work really hard on your communication. I think that's something I will never stop working hard on, and I'm never gonna say I'm there. Is my communication, either cadences, how I communicate, how I can teach other people to communicate. Those are things that I'll always be focused on, because I feel like that's what can bring the team to be step in step and not necessarily having to verbally communicate. Like, if everyone knows the mission, everyone has the same core values, and you're constantly, chattering back and forth. Like, one of the coolest things that I've seen is the radio chatter. Like, before the season kicked off, I was like, all right, we're going to be moving in a lot of different directions. Like, we need to up our radio game and go from 4 radios that we weren't using to, 10 that almost every lead or even person who's off working by themselves gets, so that it's like, hey, we're moving in this direction. Something happened. We need this person. Hey, did you see that? The amount of time that's been saved and the connection that people have just because of those radios, it's nuts. And then someone sometimes put some Steve Miller Band on over the radio, get everyone juiced, on some Joker. But it's just stuff like that makes it fun. Like, we are manufacturing plants, but like, we get to grow cannabis commercially, legally. Like, if that don't get you excited, I don't know what does.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that you alluded to earlier, which I think about all the time, because obviously we're looking for new talent, especially like, management level talent. This is such a new industry that very few people actually come with cannabis experience. And a lot of them, if they do, they come with bad habits. So the majority of the really solid people that we have didn't come from cannabis. They came from education. Yeah. They're prison guards. Yep. They were scientists, right? And they're like reinventing themselves in the cannabis industry. Yeah. And so I think that's awesome. Just like that people are, kind of taking a step back in their career and entering into something that they really love. And then B, I kind of want to know what your journey was, right? Because you didn't start off in cannabis, right? You have a traditional ag background.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's an opportunity that, I think a lot of people have been waiting for and have been yearning for, but it hasn't been either something they were willing to risk, their freedom or whatever that looked like. And so now that it's kind of a little bit more open and more folks are open-minded about it, I think there are more folks like myself stepping into, like you just mentioned, Alex, he was an entomologist working, structural entomology, and now he's our IPM specialist, and he's doing a ton of different awesome things for us. So it's a really cool opportunity what, the cannabis industry is creating. For me, I really didn't think I was going to be a grower up until I started smoking cannabis regularly. And then I was like, you know what? I want to start working. It wasn't even about like cannabis. It was like, I want to be in nature. Cannabis plant kind of turned me on to, I want to feel the vibes, whatever you want to say, right? Absolutely. I was like, I just want to disconnect from this lab, because I was a chemistry major and I was like in a lab wearing a respirator all the time. And I was like, man, there's no windows in here. This feels depressing as shit. Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life wearing a white lab coat? Like this, I don't know. So, smoking a lot of weed in college. And I was like, all right, I'm going to switch it up and I'm going to go into plant biology. And then I got a hold of Jorge Cervantes' Grow Bible, and I was reading that and I was like, holy shit. Like, I should be growing cannabis, because I really like smoking cannabis. It does a lot for me as a person. Plus, like, I think I'm a pretty good grower. Like, I used to do a lot of landscaping when I was a kid. I had a small business. I used to manage and manicure football fields and baseball fields. 14 to 18. So like I've been around that sort of care, right? And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get into this. I really wasn't studying that hard at all. And then I had this professor, Dr. Paul Thomas. He passed away a couple years ago, but that guy, like, he flipped a switch for me because I was taking care of other people's plants, and he was like, hey man, you don't show up to class very often except for like the lab days or when you need to take care of the plants. And, I really like you to come to lecture more often, but like, I appreciate you doing what you're doing because it doesn't seem like the other folks really care. And I was like, yeah, man, I mean, this is what I like doing. I like taking care of these plants, and they were poinsettias. He let me take home other people's plants at the end of the year. And that was the opportunity that, flipped my switch for horticulture. And I was like, all right, I can sell these, make a bunch of money, for Christmas for my family and my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, from here on out, I'm going to grow plants and I'm going to sell them. And it was focused mostly on flowers because that seemed something like it was a commercial opportunity that I could take my degree right away and do something, go get a grower job and like learn the fundamentals of growing. I was lucky enough to get an internship where I left school for like 6 months and went and did every job you could imagine in a floriculture greenhouse operation in Colorado. So mixing soil all the way to like merchandising and selling the plants at Costco and Home Depot, everything in between. And that kind of like set the stage for, okay, this isn't about books. This is about like actually getting in there and doing shit, like growing, showing up day in, day out, being consistent, being methodical. And so I knew I had to continue learning. And all the while I was growing cannabis, trying to figure out a way, hey, when I get the opportunity, I'm going to move right into that. It was medical in Colorado, and, things were picking up really crazy around the country, but it didn't seem quite like, it was a pipe dream, pun intended. It was a pipe dream. And then I was in New Mexico growing in a 20-acre greenhouse, all these flowers, and it was like year 3 that I'd been managing the greenhouse, and I started kind of getting antsy, like, oh man, there's something, I want to do something more. So I reached out like cold to these different medical marijuana operations there in New Mexico, and they were really small at the time. And I was like, hey, I bet you have bug problems, because I do too, and I solved mine. And one of the guys, this owner named Coy, he bid on it, and he was like, fuck yeah, we got bug problems. Like, why don't you come out here? And I was like, all right, well, this is my first consulting gig. I'm on it. So I was driving 3.5 hours after work, after being at the greenhouse all day, to the other side of New Mexico, staying for 4 hours, driving back in the middle of the night, and then going back to work, just so I could get that opportunity to be in a cannabis crop, like growing and working with these guys. And,
that's awesome.
And it was so much fun, dude. Like, I was lit on fire, and I was like telling everyone at work, at the greenhouse, I was like, you guys, like, I can't believe I'm getting to do this. And I got a few more of those opportunities, and then I went looking for a legal job in Colorado, and I got badged up and everything. And it turns out the company I was working for at the time was building a small cannabis operation, but more focused in the CBD side of it. And they were like, hey, it seems like you know what you're talking about when it comes to cannabis, and you definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to running our greenhouses. So why don't you move up to Colorado and start this, greenhouse operation and really bring it to fruition. So I did that for about 1.5 years, and that was kind of like the true entrance into commercial cannabis. I think we rooted over 500,000 clones that first year and sold to growers. And that was a shit ton of fun. So much learning experience. I lost like probably 100,000 in one go off of something crazy from a, substrate from a supplier coming with fungus gnat larvae. It was nuts. But the whole time I was having a blast. All that being said, those 5.5 years of 80-hour work weeks, especially in the flower business. It's cannabis growers have it tough, but flower business is rough. Like, there's just no way around saying that. Like,
Right.
you're not making much good money and you're working non-stop. It just, so I was like, all right, these guys who are running this cannabis operation up here, the owners, they're still thinking ornamental. I'm still working like I'm an ornamental grower. I need to do something different. And I really loved beneficial insects and IPM, kind of what I was doing before with that medical operation. And that took me into helping other folks do that. And then, I had a small business for a little over 3 years, and a tech company came and said, hey, we'd like to purchase the company and, take what you've got, the models and the frameworks for helping growers, and implement it with our technology. I intended to continue working for them, but after selling the business, it not being my baby anymore, and not necessarily aligning in some of the direction for the future, plus me traveling, 15 days a month with 2 kids, I was like, this ain't for me anymore, and totally. My wife was the one who actually was like, what do you think about growing again? And I was like, because I was, looking at other sales jobs and stuff like that, being a technical specialist. And she was like, I want to put roots down somewhere and live somewhere. You need to go grow something for a long period of time. And so that's where we met. Yeah. And that's how I got to this point. But, cannabis has been kind of, riding passenger seat since that very first year in college, trying to figure out what I was doing. I was smoking before that, but that kind of influenced me, and then that's the journey so far. Definitely a lot left to be written.
Absolutely, there really is. It's interesting, like that gypsy lifestyle that you had. Like, I mean, my wife and I have moved every 2 years since we got together. It's like you're following the plant, you're following legalization.
Yep.
So I'm super stoked to be here in Northern Michigan, and also have put down roots, and to have a kid, and I don't see us going anywhere either. So
this is the place to raise a family for sure. And I love growing here. It's got a lot of curveballs, but man, I think if you can figure out how to hit those curves, you can do some cool stuff up here.
What do you think about like the appellation that we're in, like the sandy loam, the being close to the water? Do you think that kind of stuff has an effect on the quality of the product?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as time goes on. We're measuring bricks right now, and bricks in cannabis, there's not enough correlation for the whole industry to be really buzzing about it. But one of my good buddies, Scott Wall's, really working hard when it comes to sap analysis, like trying to understand what bricks levels in the plant sap do for cannabinoid, flavonoid, and terpenoid or terpene production. And so like that sugar, that bricks, everyone up here talks about wine country and cherries having these cooling hours and having the lake effect create bricks. And so we're doing our sap samples, we're getting bricks reports back that are close to what you'd get in a flowering plant, and they're not flowering yet. And we're like, well, we got some high brick. Is that a good thing? It seems like it is, because high bricks tends to fight off pests, tends to help you fight off pathogens. So like, while we have some crazy ass weather here, right, that dumps rain, dumps cold weather in the morning, I still think that there's some advantages that come from that lake effect, and also like the photo period, how long the days are during the summer. It'll be interesting to see how quickly the days get shorter, and what that does to the maturation process of flower. Because when you talk about cannabis, one of my good friends, Dr. Allison Justice, has been working like really hard on trying to understand how plants react to light and the absence of light, and specifically focused on cannabis, because most people think it's, you need 12 hours of darkness, or 12 hours of light. It's really related to how much darkness the plant is getting. But that's not the only variable. There's variables when it comes to microclimate. They think there's variables when it comes to like total light like accumulated. So your light intensity and where you're at, geographically, how high the altitude is, like there's a lot of factors going in there. And so like being able to be a part of the data collection and, having the insight and be able to share that with folks like her and be like, hey, check out our information and sending that back. Like we are going to learn so much about the uniqueness of this environment over the next, 5 years as we grow cannabis up here, that it's going to be, I think we might have the opportunity to have a similar label like, Michigan grapes and Michigan wine or Michigan cherries have a pretty, high regard, big importance. And I think over time, yes, places like California might have the ability to run 3 auto flower crops or, multiple crops back to back to back to back. But they fight different things and they deal with different things. No matter where you grow, you're going to fight pests, you're going to fight pathogens. You got to pick your battles, and we'll see I don't think there's a lot of things in California that are raising the bricks or contributing like we might think the lake is, or being this far north with the latitude. It's cool, man. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting to me, like being a legacy grower, like what we used to do was like based on lore and like bro science, and then to come to the farm and see you guys doing like real science is kind of mind-blowing, and it's really what's necessary to like take the industry to where it needs to go, right? Because there's so much unknown with the plant and how it grows, and then obviously like the effects that it has on people. So like you're talking about bricks. I've been growing for a long time. I have no idea what the fuck bricks are. But that's the cool part too of working, like you were talking about Chris earlier, like being able to work with fellas like yourself and Chris, because I'm coming at it from 80% science. That's the way I'm approaching it. 20% of it's art, and to me a lot of the art is art of communication and leading people and the gut feeling of being a farmer. Like, I know you've got those gut feelings. I know Chris has got those gut feelings. Like, that's not something that you just, like, acquire. Some of it's built into you as a nurturer, and then some of it's, like, something you can really work hard and gain through experience. But, man, the art part of it, I think, is what, like, drives me day to day, because I'm a gambler at heart. And like that's the art of gambling, art of farming, shit. They're the same thing, man. Like farmers are the biggest gamblers I've ever met, and it's cool the way they deploy their capital and the way they gamble. But like the science aspect, bringing that into it, that is like what you said is exactly what we're after. Trying to solve for unknowns. Like there's just so many things that we haven't been able to objectively measure in the past, and that's because it was illegal. So like, oh, well, yeah, why would I don't have the money for a volumetric water content and EC meter. Like I might get shut down next week. Like I'm just trying to rip this crop out, and I've been growing it this way for this long. Like the margins are good. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at some point the market changed, right? And we're really dealing with that now, where to me, if you're not heavily focused on the science and looking at it through almost a plant manufacturing perspective, you're going to leave a lot of money on the table, a lot of margin, because science is how we can objectively measure what we're doing and then kind of manage it, improve it. And I think that we're just scraping the surface of how we can use different, elements of science to impact our production of cannabis. I mean, there's going to be stuff that we learn, like you just mentioned, where we're going to learn things as growers that will help like techniques that will impact the consumer in a certain way. And that is like to me, that's one of the reasons why I don't think I'll ever be able to stop being a part of the cannabis industry in some way, shape, or form, because there is no thing I've
ever grown that has as much of can have as much of an impact on another person as cannabis. And that's like flowers is awesome. I love seeing the joy of people smelling the flowers I grew, or like, oh, I bought this for my mom and she flipped out, or like planting it in their landscape. But not nearly like cannabis. Food is close, right? Food is closer because the culinary, like, oh, someone's eating my food. They're over there nourishing themselves. They're happy. They're joyous, whatever that is. But man, the effects that cannabis can have and how you can impact someone through all that work you put into it, and being able to use science to toggle it. That's, for me, it's a control thing. Right. Science gives you more control, and I want to control as much of it as possible. You'll never, ever remove the art because plants are perishable.
Right.
You can't predict, like, you're just not going to predict what's going on. There are too many outside variables with pests, pathogens, weather,
right,
that it's always going to have some art and subjectivity where someone's going to have to go, you know what, in my heart of hearts, this is the best feeling and this is the right way to go. But the cool thing is you don't have to do that without any support. You've got a lot of evidence to go, okay, and like, I can't believe folks like, Senior, like, right. Holy shit, that guy's been farming for as long as he has, like, this and his gut, it's fucking awesome. Yeah. Like, I feel so lucky that I have all these tools. That's really what it is. It's just the toolbox opened way up.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are gamblers. I think I'm a gambler. Like, it's fun, man. Like, that
dude is a serious gambler.
Yeah, but like, that's why I love agriculture. Like, I love those people's stories, of what they've done and what they've like, when you talk to a farmer, they have some of the most epic stories because, like, there's shit that's, even if they're trying their hardest, there's stuff that's out of their control, and they have like this special way of putting it into perspective and looking at it, and it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when your entire existence is on the line, like every year at all times. Yeah. It's a whole nother ballgame.
It is.
And farmers do have the best stories, absolutely. I think one of the things that's super interesting to me about what you're doing is that I feel like you're growing craft product at scale.
Trying to, yeah.
And like, the industry is changing a lot. There's all these, huge operators coming in, and, people are, myself, I'm wondering, like, where is the industry going, right? Like, at a certain point, is it going to be sold in gas stations, like in cigarette packs once, Philip Morris gets into this when it's federally legal? Like, do you believe the, like, comparison to the alcohol industry where there's going to be, like, mass producers and craft growers? Is that kind of like the same framework that you see?
100%. To me, there is a certain amount of care that has to go into a crop to get it to turn out the way I want it to smoke it. Like, what's interesting is there are a few buddies that I have, one in California and one here in Michigan, that if they were to pull up with a pound of their product, I'd probably pay $3,200 for it. Like, knowing, like, what, like, I would hoard it, type of thing. And so, like, there are always going to be those type of cannabis consumers that are, like, chasing that quality, that flavor, that effect, whatever it is. And then I think there's going to be a lot of folks that want to be able to, on their way home every afternoon at 5:15, stop at their convenience store, pick up the same thing, and know that it's going to do the same exact thing every time.
Right.
So that consistency is actually, like, if us guys that really give a shit about the plant and really want to see consumers get what they want when they want it, if we cannot get pushed out by these huge conglomerates, right? Then I think there will be that analogy to beer industry. It'll be the same.
I totally see it. I mean, I'm a history buff. I love, that was, like, always my favorite subject in school. So, like, I look at alcohol prohibition and the period after prohibition ended, and it's very similar to what's going on right now.
Cool. Okay.
Right? And then like what you're talking about right now is directly akin to alcohol, right? Like you have your people who stop, and I used to be one of them, right? When I used to drink, I'd stop when I finished work and I'd get a tall can every day, right? I fucking drank Bud Light and Coors Light.
Yep.
I was not a microbrew drinker, right? My dad drinks microbrews only, right?
Yep.
He'll go line up for Pliny the Younger or Elder,
cool.
whichever one is the one that you have to line up for, right? And so I totally see that, and it's interesting to me when people say like, "Oh, fuck that, that's not a good comparison." I totally see it.
I think it's a great comparison, especially like when you think about the passion that those microbrewers have. Like, I think that's what, as someone who really appreciates the legacy and had like, I don't want to say like my foot in it. I'd say like my toe in it compared to a lot of my homies, my toe in the legacy industry. But like, if we can maintain that sort of love and passion for production and the plant that you see microbrewers have about their beer, then I think like a lot of what needs to be retained from the legacy market can be retained. Whether or not we do a good job of it is up to us, But like the community, the culture, the impact that the plant has, like, and the passion that we have for it, that doesn't have to be lost with federal legalization at all. And I think there are people who are actively fighting against for it to happen, but maybe have the, in my opinion, just the wrong perspective in that there can be both. Like, it doesn't have to be like, it can't be like it was before.
Nope.
It'll never be like it was before. Nope. But we can still have that sort of love and care and passion for what we do and like who did it with us in the past and who's doing it with us now. And then we're going to have that many more people. Like, it'll be this cool feedback loop where like people get introduced to the Bud Lights of cannabis, and they're like, oh yeah, this is good, I like cannabis. And they're like, wait a second, man, like I'm kind of into this a little bit more. And then it's like, oh shit, there's these guys over here that give a lot of shits. Right. And like, they have this really cool branding, they have this cool feeling. It's more than just like a plant, it's more than just a product. It's a consumer packaged good with an emotion behind it. Yeah. Like that, we'll get there, and it'll be really cool to see. I just hope that a lot of the folks that have kind of dug their heels in will realize that there's a place for them in that sort of future.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I also think it's really interesting the way that I see you like collaborating with other operators.
Oh yeah.
I think like the history of legacy cannabis is very close to the chest. We didn't talk to anybody about what we're doing. Like I told Chris and I, existing for years around each other and never knowing that we're both doing the exact same thing. And then, being up on the hill and not knowing your neighbors, not talking about, we're all having the same fucking problems up here, but we're not talking to each other and figuring out what one guy is doing to fix it. And so, like, for me to see you, like, with your mastermind group and, like, collaborating with people on LinkedIn and then, putting out, like, super fire clones for other operators, and then, like, the collaborations that you're doing with other operators, like, growing for other people at the farm, right? Like, big brands. Like, that's a big thing to me, that somebody comes in and values what you're doing, and like thinks enough of it to like put their genetics in your hands and have you do it. So like, I mean, I love watching you work with other people, and I think it's super interesting to see like the collaborative effort that's starting to come into cannabis. Yeah,
I think it's something that I learned very early on as an ornamental grower, where like I was kind of in the same position that you were describing, like as a cannabis grower, but I was an ornamental grower. And the reason I was in that position is because I got thrown the keys 6 months into the job. Like I was an intern, and then I came on as a grower, like managing like 5 to 10 acres of this 20-acre greenhouse. And then my boss left and his boss left. And they're like, hey dude, you're the only one down there. Like, good luck. And you want it? And I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome, right? Sink or swim. So jumped in. But, dude, the owners were up in Colorado managing those facilities. I was down in New Mexico, and I had no idea what I was doing for the first bit of time, other than I had one mentor that would drive down and talk to me, and then I started reaching out to all these vendors of these different products and be like, hey, can you come visit me? And then I would like read all these trade magazines. Like every morning after the morning meeting, I'd be in my office for like 3 hours, and they're like, they used to call me Chuck. And they're like, Chuck, what are you doing in there all the time? I was like, dude, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Like, I don't know, man. Like, this is all new to me, right? And so I was struggling like hell. And then I met a few growers that were really open. And I was like, holy shit. Like, they know exactly what I'm going through, the struggles. Like, they understand the context of like all the problems I'm having. And being able to get their ear and their advice, even just small amounts of it, was like stupid valuable to me. And so from then on, I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure out a way to spend more time with growers. And my dad has always been like a really big networking fellow. Like from the time I was we would be at the grocery store for hours because the dude would just talk to people. And so, it was fun, but it was at the time I didn't like it. Now I understand it. And but that networking thing was kind of in my blood, and so I was like, all right. And the podcast kind of really opened my eyes when we started Crop Talk, and I started like talking to other growers and like going to visit their farm and then starting to consult for them. And I was like, man, we're in so much of these silos. Like we're just so head down in what we're doing. Like, and you have to be to get a lot of shit done. But at the same time, like we're all facing the same exact problems.
Yep.
Whether it's leadership related, whether it's plant health related, whether it's market related, we're all dealing with it. And for the most part, like growers do care about seeing other people succeed. And like, I don't think there's a super strong, like competitive angle on like one grower versus the other, because for the most part, like we all understand it's about execution, and it's about all these little details, and like your situation is different than mine for 100 different reasons. Right. And so like to think that I could ever give someone a piece of information that was so valuable that they could run with it and beat me in growing, I just have never felt that way. And so I was like, okay, all this knowledge is great, all these tools are great, but do you know how to use your tools? And can you use them consistently, day in, day out? And then teach people to do that day in, day out. And if you can do that, you'll be a great grower. That's not something you're just going to give to someone in a 15-minute conversation or a mastermind.
100%.
So I'm like, I will share everything, because if you have the resolve and you're the type of person that can take all of those details, apply them to your situation and crush it, shit, man, I should probably be talking to you a lot more frequently, because I could learn some things from you.
Seriously.
And so being able to connect with all these different growers, learn from them, and then also provide them value. The other cool thing is like we're in silos, and there's also there's so many different vendors and so many different solutions that like you would spend all of your time as a grower if you were letting all of these things come to you and you're researching them. So like to be able to offer some input to someone and be like, hey, you need to talk to this company with this product, it saves people days, weeks, or damage to their crop because they didn't spray something or they did spray something wrong. And so just having those sorts of relationships to be able to give to people and say, hey, talk to this person. I've gotten so much from other people doing that for me. Like, hey, you've got to talk to this guy. Great example is some of that collaboration that we're doing with Wonder Bread.
Yeah.
It's a crazy circle how this works, but when I had Crop Walk and Crop Talk, there was this fella named David that I met at an MJ BizCon like 3.5 years ago, or it's almost 4 now, and he's from a Plant Life company, and they're a fertilizer company. Well, he was like, hey man, I've been following you on LinkedIn, I love the content. And we kicked it off, and we'd just been chatting back and forth, and been just friends on LinkedIn. One day he's like, hey, there's this person that needs some help. Can I connect you to him? I was like, I don't really think I can help from that angle. Like, I'm not doing consulting, but I definitely think there's some information I can give to this fella that is going to set him on the right path to go find what he needs to solve his problem. Like, I'm not looking for any money from this. I would like to talk to the dude because what he's done is pretty fucking cool,
right.
You know, and like, I want to learn from him. So then it was this exchange. That's the, like, I'm leading with value first every time I'm coming into one of those relationships. And that's
so fucking crucial.
Got to. Yeah. And if you do that, then it's amazing the return, like that deposit and like the dividends that come from it. There's a fella named Alex Hormozy that's like, the longer, and he talks about like the longer that you can give value and delay asking for something, it's like a compounding exponential degree that happens to what you can get back. And so I'm just looking to give and continue to give until the stars align to work with someone. And sometimes giving something to someone and working with them in that aspect helps you understand whether or not you really want to work with them too.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, you kick ass too. Let's do some business. Let's figure out how we can do this together. And it seems like in an industry, and especially a market like this, if we're not focused on trying to do whatever we can to do whatever we can to be best, plus find out how to help other people do their thing so we can come together and do something even better, I think you're going to fizzle out and you ain't going to be here very long.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that like concept of like giving freely of what you know. I mean, for me, it kind of ties back to like my life in recovery of like helping people, one alcoholic helping another alcoholic, one addict helping another. So that's very much how I tend to operate too. So I totally dig that. Earlier you talked about Jorge Cervantes' Grow Bible, obviously, which I think that dude has gotten so many people started in the game. Are there other books that you recommend for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cannabis Growers Handbook, that's a revised edition with Ed Rosenthal and Dr. Rob.
Other OGs.
Yep. And Dr. Rob, the cool thing about that book to me is that's the first book that has blended legacy, culture, and growing, and like kind of showed how it's, evolved into the commercial scene, and then like it's giving commercially relevant information. I would say like for people that are just kind of getting into the game, and we make it a requirement for all the people on our cultivation team to get to a next level of cultivation is to review that book and then be ready to have conversation with me and the rest of the team on it, because just that foundational knowledge is what I need so that we all speak the same language. And that's something that like I've seen be really valuable, because it being a legacy market transition into the legal market, there's a lot of information silos, and there's a lot of slang. There's a lot of different terms. There's a lot of this means the same thing, and you guys think you're talking about completely different, like swazzing, defoliate. Like there's so many different lingos that if everyone is talking in their own language and like you're spinning wheels trying to get shit done, like it's frustrating. And I've been there. So having a book like that for the team to be able to get like this kind of foundational language that we can speak and talk in the same terms has been really helpful. I would also say that there's some really cool content out there from different like educational courses and content. So I took a course, I'm still working through some of it on drying and building out dry rooms, because this fella has built out quite a few different rooms in different environments and in some weird spots in Oregon with really weird, nasty microclimates. And so like me personally, I was like, I've seen this guy do some pretty cool stuff. I'm going to invest some of my money because I want to see what I can understand from this and apply to my situation. And so like, I want to make sure, anyone who's listening to this understands that like, I don't think I'll ever stop paying for knowledge from other people that have a specialized skill set. different than mine. Like until the day I die, I'm going to be looking to up my game, or getting their information so that like I can apply it to what I'm doing. So I recommend anytime you can invest in yourself in like learning more and upping your game, definitely do it. And there's a lot of free information out there as well that I think is worth looking at. One of the best ways to do it is to use LinkedIn. Like there are so many cool folks on LinkedIn that are sharing a bunch of information. And the cool thing about that is it's, if you find the right people that are open, transparent, will share their struggles and their wins, like you're kind of seeing the real time evolution of like their success or their failures. And like a book is awesome because that book is something you can hold on to, but it's in the past.
Right.
A lot of the new social content can be something that you follow a journey of. And so I'm really into that. But online courses are something I would definitely recommend for folks looking to up their game. It's what's tough for growers that I've noticed, and I struggle with it, is finding the time outside of like your typical activity to do it. And what I think I've found for myself is having the lens of like, I need to learn this and have someone else on the team learn this with me. And I need to do it like in small chunks with them and do it during business hours so that they can benefit from it too. And like that it's not too much all at once and that it's contextually relevant. That's something that's cool too, because if you're doing it in real time at the farm, like you can go look at something on the computer and be like, oh, I just learned about it. Like, let's go look. Yep. Like, let's go out there right now. Right. And like this morning we did, I taught 4 of our team members to sample for pathogens. And the purpose is one, so that, we can do it on the farm really consistently and make sure that our mother stock is clean and that the clones we sell to other folks are clean and the clones we produce, for ourselves are clean. But inevitably, like we were talking about, working with other growers to help them understand what problems they may have in their crop and diagnose those things. And like the team today was like, you could just tell they were eating it up. Like, and it's not because I'm teaching it, it's because they're thirsty for knowledge. And it's cool, really cool to watch too, when like they pick it up, they take it, they run with it, and then they're coming back to you and talking about it like 2 or 3 days later. So, hey, well, are those results in? What do we know, right? And that to me, like that sort of curiosity and that pride, ooh boy, that's the fun.
That's serious right there. I mean, I've like removed from the farm right now, but I'm in the same boat, like, trying to evolve with the industry. Yep. I'm taking accounting and finance classes, and then also like Darren and I are doing a deep dive on marketing, right? Like the same deal. I've spent like thousands of dollars this summer on educating myself, and then now like Darren and I are trying to get educated on the social stuff. Like this is the future of marketing. This is a piece that our business has been missing. And so like we're really focused on it right now. We're trying to do this podcast. We're bringing in people who have really good experience with certain aspects of social media. And so like one of the things that I always think about is that there hasn't been like a commercially successful cannabis podcast, right? Like there are cannabis business podcasts, right? That are interesting for guys like us who are in the cannabis industry, interested in the trajectory of the industry, interested in the legalization. There are cannabis growing podcasts that are interesting for guys like you and for guys like me, maybe in a different place in my life. And like, like Crop Talk, right? Like I listened to Crop Talk before you came to work with us. I'm like, God, this guy's so fucking smart. But like that content is for a very niche market, right?
Super niche.
So like, what do we need to do to make a cannabis podcast that like appeals to the masses? Like you were talking this morning about Cam listening to a podcast that he like halfway doesn't like, you know?
Yeah. It seems like the real documentation of what people are going through would like resonate in a crazy way. And it seems like we have got the perfect kind of canvas here with the vertically integrated business, in that like every really seed to sale, we're working through it on the daily. And you know, when I look at content and I get excited about content, it's either like super technical, where like I've got a model and a method, and like I'm putting things in place and like thinking about it from an organization and process standpoint, or it's like just wanting to like be in someone else's shoes, like watch them do what they're doing. And I think that we have so many cool people on this team doing so many cool, like I made a post yesterday about the sprayer getting up and running, and like I was sitting there kind of like choked up thinking about that like 3-week period of the ups and downs we were going through to get the sprayer working the right way.
Right.
And it was no fault of our own. It came fucked up, and we were like
damage,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And so we're like, oh well shit, man. What are we gonna do with this thing like it is? Well, Mason and Fish, with their specialties, they figured out how to get what we needed, get it in the right space, get it all hooked up, then make all the GPS work and all the electrical components. And then Alex is reading the manual and like learning how to calibrate it. And this thing's got high voltage on it, so it could kill someone if we turn it on. You know, like all these different pieces of the puzzle, and it finally comes together. And it would like the journey, a scene that like that's really what the cannabis industry is about. Same with like retail, like the folks on our retail team. Like I'll go into the shop. Sometimes I just go into the shop because I want to like go buy something and see how the team's doing, because they're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Alex yesterday looked at me and says, "Hey, I want to get better at educating our team on the relevant pieces of cultivation. I don't need a ton of information. I just need enough that makes sense. So like when we're explaining it, it helps them understand the value they're getting out of this product." And like that right there, documenting that. I think all these aspects can be highlighted in a like not too formal, not too high a production way, and people will really appreciate that. I also think it being holistic is really cool, and going from like, you know, talking to some of the CEOs and different owners of businesses that you work with, all the way to talking with someone on the manufacturing team that's filling a pre-roll, and like talking to them about like, why is it important that you're packing it this way?
Yep.
And like, if you don't, what happens? And then like,
right.
What's oh, well, it gets to the store, it gets bought, they don't like it, it comes back. Like, there's so many interconnecting pieces that it's really cool to think about the angles that you could take on it. But we have a really cool canvas, and we've got the people. And I think, like we were talking about before, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, it's all these people doing something unique or impactful for this whole machine to move. And I think we've got a pretty cool culture. Like, we've got this, you know, I don't want to toot our own horn, but we've got this like mix of the legacy, pride and passion for cannabis, but like this tenacity to just be business operators.
Yep.
And that's the coolest thing for me, because like I want to and will always want to be a part of businesses that are focused on the fundamentals of getting shit done and being a good business. And I get to do it with cannabis.
Yeah.
You know? And so
100%.
Documenting that, I mean, there's a lot of podcasts that are just talking about smoking weed, and I love smoking weed, don't get me wrong, but like, there's more to me than that.
Yeah.
There's more to all of us than that, but that is what brings us together, that common, that common thread. So kind of having the cannabis be the common thread, but being able to dive deep and then come out and focus in. I think a lot of people would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's exactly what we're going to do. Focus on talking about our business, about what we're doing here, and the people who make this business special, make it run, make it what it is. I think to me that's like the most interesting thing is the people. So
yeah.
Like I'm super excited that you were willing to come here and do this like as the inaugural podcast.
Hell
so
yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Pleasure chatting with you as always.
Man, it's been a blast. I love getting the chance to share about what I'm passionate about, and we got a couple more months left, and we're gonna have this field harvested, and we'll be getting that indoor up and running and cranking. There's a lot of opportunity. I'm stoked, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm stoked too. We're definitely gonna have to document the shit out of the rest of the year.
I mean, I was earlier today. I was like, man, I'm gonna get me a GoPro and just strap that thing on my chest and walk around all day.
I got one. I'll give it to you.
I would be down, like, and what I would do is I would just strategically give it to different people. So like, you know, I'd wear it for an hour, then, you know, give it to Cam, give it to someone out doing trellis or bamboo, give it to someone mixing, and, you know, like it would be cool.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yep.
Let's implement that. Awesome. Very good.
That's an hour and 5 minutes.
Sweet. That's an easy hour.